Welcome to Our Town. Dorothy Thompson speaking to you today from the Richland Center Arboretum. And wouldn't it be cool if we could see a falcon or a hawk or maybe even an owl? Well, stay right here and you can. Take you to the community center where the Brewer Library sponsored a program last week called River Valley Raptors, and we'll learn about owls, hawks, falcons, and we'll see some.
Actually build a bird center somewhere closer to like the La Crosse area, so much closer to you guys. We want to have a facility that people can come and visit and see the birds, and our goal is to actually do flighted bird programs. So all the birds that we have are trained to do flights. We just unfortunately don't have a facility where we can do that quite yet. So hopefully in the next few years that'll be possible. But our goal is to inspire conservation. So our hopes is that at the end of this program, after you guys see our birds and you get to meet them, that you're going to feel more inspired to go out and do things that are going to help protect them. So we'll talk about a couple of those things at the end of this program. Now, do you think these birds are my pets? No, in fact, I actually call them my coworkers because they help me go and teach people. So because they're wild animals, I do have to have special permits with both Wisconsin DNR and U.S. Fish and Wildlife to bring them. Now, the three birds I have with me today are all raptors. We have 4 major groups of raptors in Wisconsin. What are those groups? Tell me one. Owls. Vultures aren't really considered a raptor, but they are a bird of prey. Way in the back. Hawks, yeah. Owls and hawks, yeah. Falcons, yep. There's one more. Eagles, that's right. Eagles, owls, hawks, and falcons are the 4 major groups of raptors in Wisconsin. Now, we also have ospreys and harriers that just don't really seem to fit into any one of those 4 groups. And there are occasionally a kite that makes its way up here, a Mississippi kite, but they have a lot more kites farther down south. Now, to be considered a raptor, though, we'll talk a little bit about what that means. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get out our first bird. She is part of the hawk family, and we have 7 different types of hawks that you can find here. I'm going to go ahead and get her out here.
You have to be
So this is Rosita. And some of you guys here probably met her last year. Now as you guys take a look at her, we'll give you a hint as to what kind of hawk she is. What do you think? Not an eagle. She's a type of hawk. What kind of hawk do you think she is? She is a red-tailed hawk. That's right. Red-tailed hawks are one of the most common raptors in the whole United States. Now, as I mentioned, all raptors have 3 things in common that make them raptors. And we can see those just by looking at them. That make her different than, say, a crow or a pelican. What is one of those things? Yeah. Her beak. Yeah. What did you say about it? It's curved, yeah. So her beak is kind of like a tool. If she catches a mouse, she can swallow that mouse whole, kind of like the mouse I have in my hand here. But if she catches something bigger, like a rabbit, she's going to put that rabbit in between her feet there, hold it down, and use that curved beak to rip and tear that food into smaller pieces. Now, she doesn't have any teeth. She's not going to do any chewing. In fact, that beak is pretty weak. There's not a lot of power. And now she's just, oh, nope, she changed her mind. Thought she's going to swallow it whole. No, she's going to rip and tear it. Now she's gonna swallow everything. The fur, if she was eating a bird, the feathers, the bones, and just like owls, there it goes, gone. Just like owls, all raptors cough up pollen. The only difference is that hawks, eagles, and falcons can digest those bones. So a lot of times their pellets are mainly just fur or feathers. Only owls have the full skeleton of whatever they ate in those pellets, which is why we dissect owl pellets. So curved beak is one. What's another one? Their eyes. Yes. If you take a look at her eyes, you're only seeing a small portion of that eye. But that eye is about the size of her brain. And that gives her really good eyesight. So if you were to go out to a football field and have someone on one end holding up a newspaper, if you had raptor eyes, you could read the fine print of that newspaper all the way across the football field at 100 yards away. That's how good that eyesight is. So if she's sitting up on top of a telephone pole, it's not just that she can see that mouse running underneath her. If she could count the whiskers on that mouse. That's how crisp and detailed that vision is for her. So curved beak, good eyesight. There is one more thing that makes her a raptor. Talons! Yeah, in fact, that's probably the main one because the word raptor actually comes from the Latin word rapier, which means to rip or to grasp. So raptor literally means to grab, which is what they do with their feet. That is where all the power is. So that is where she catches her prey, and that is how she kills her prey. So curved feet, strong feet, sharp talons, and good eyesight are what make her part of the raptor family. Now, as I mentioned, these guys are one of the most common raptors in the United States. They are found on every state except Hawaii. And part of that has to do with the fact that these guys are what we call generalists. That means that they are generalized into eating many different things. So what do you guys think a hawk's gonna eat? A red-tailed hawk, yeah. Small birds, yeah, quail, pheasants, ducks, yeah, definitely birds, yeah. Mice and rats, yeah, rodents, yeah. Yeah, in the orange.
Nova.
What do you think? Not sure? Okay, yeah.
What do you think it'll eat?
What do you think she eats? Nice, yeah. Rabbits. Snakes, yeah. So we've covered mammals. We've covered reptiles. We've covered birds.
Nova.
We're still missing
Nova.
one, yeah. Squirrels, yep, she's gonna eat squirrels. Way in the back. Fish is actually one of the only things red tails aren't really a big fan of going and catching and eating. Vultures and osprey and bald eagles, they all love fish. Hawks, not as much. So there's still a different category we're missing other than fish. Yeah. They will eat some bugs, just with their body size. Chasing bugs they're just not a big part of their diet, but again, it's not like they won't eat one. Especially smaller, younger birds that are having trouble finding food might start resorting to eating like dragonflies and grasshoppers. So definitely something they will eat. Yeah.
Falcon.
Amphibians, yeah, frogs and toads, yeah. So they eat pretty much every part of the food chain except the fish. So, yeah. Now, Rosita's a little bit different than the other birds. You guys probably remember this from last year that we're here. But most of the birds we have at River Valley Raptors cannot survive in the wild. So that is why they are with us. They'll spend the rest of their lives with us doing education. But my husband and I, on top of doing education, we are also licensed falconers. You guys ever heard of the term falconry? Some of you maybe? Do any of you guys have moms or dads or aunts and uncles who like to hunt? Yeah, a few of you. Yeah, so typically when you go out into the woods and you go hunting, you might bring a rifle or a shotgun or even a bow and arrow. When I go into the woods and go hunting, I don't bring any of that. The only thing I bring with me is Rosita. And And I take all of this stuff off her feet, and she flies up into a tree, and she follows me as I walk through the woods. And my job is to try to get a rabbit or a squirrel to move in front of her, and then she'll come down and she'll catch it with her feet. So that's how we go hunting together. So we actually tracked Rosita from the wild as a first-year bird. We knew she was a first-year bird because she did not have these red tail feathers yet. She actually had some brown striped feathers. Now, in the wild, anywhere from 50 to sometimes 90% of raptors don't make it to their first birthday. It's a tough life to be a raptor, and a lot of the reasons they don't survive is due to starvation, not being able to hunt well. So when we take a first-year bird, and we're only allowed to take a first-year bird, we're taking them during that hardest time of their life. So when we go out hunting, if she misses, which in the beginning she missed a lot, we still took her home and we feed her. Now next spring, we're gonna actually let her go again. So she'll go back to the wild, and then we'll go trap a new young bird. And so now she'll have had a couple of seasons of hunting under her belt before she goes back to the wild. Now, I don't teach her to hunt. She already knows how to do that. I essentially just teach her that when she hunts with me, she has a better chance of catching things because I'm helping doing that work of getting things to run for her. And she recognizes me. Remember, we have that really good eyesight. So when I let her go, she's not going to see any person and think, oh, they're going to be able to help me hunt. She knows that I was her falconer and I'm the one who trained her. So hopefully those chances of survival after I release her will be much higher due to her being a much better hunter. So we're going to go ahead and put her away. Now we're going to get out our next bird. There we go. Which is part of the falcon family. Was actually clocked at 242 miles an hour. So they took a peregrine up into an airplane, threw his favorite toy out the door, and allowed the peregrine to dive down after it. He had something called an altimeter attached to him that measured how fast he was able to go. The fastest clock speed was 242. They think that if they actually took the peregrine higher, he could go faster, but he could potentially lose control. So this is diving through the air, reaching 200 miles an hour without losing any control, catching that toy, landing safely at the bottom. So they are considered the fastest land animal in the world. Of course, kind of cheating because they're using gravity to help them reach those speeds. So as we look at Cyrus, let's look at some of those things that help with that speed. Look at those wings. They're long, they're narrow, they're sort of tapered at the ends, and they're so long they cross behind his back. If you guys notice, Rosita's wings kind of just sat side by side, but his actually crossed. So that makes him very aerodynamic. As he's diving through the air, he's almost got like a W shape, increasing those speeds. Have you guys ever been on a fast boat or a fast roller coaster? Yeah, does it get hard to breathe when you go really fast? All right, so I'm gonna walk Cyrus kind of close to you guys in the front, so I just ask that you keep your hands in your lap and you don't try to pet him. But I want you guys to take a look at his nostrils. And when we are all finished at the end of the program, I will take him back out so you guys in the back can get a little better look at him. But he has special cone-shaped nostrils. And inside that cone-shaped nostril is something called a tubercle. So the cone shape sort of baffles the air while he's flying, allowing air to come in. And that tubercle, or that sort of spiral shape, allows right amount of air to get into those lungs and those air sacs, but not so much air that they were to burst. Now, if you ever get a chance, take a look at a fighter jet. If you have to look one up maybe on your phone or online, and if you look at the engine of a fighter jet, you'll see that the engine is constructed the same way as that Falcon's nostril. So when they were designing those jets, they took that right out of nature to make them have higher speed. Now, something else to take a look at as I'm walking around is if you look at his toes, they're not quite as noticeable on the kestrel because he's pretty small. But if you look at like a peregrine's toes, they're really long but really skinny. Those toes are actually longer on a peregrine than they are on a redtail. And that's because these guys are aerial predators. That means they catch their prey in the air. So if they catch prey in the air, what do you think falcons like to eat? Yeah, birds. Yeah, they are bird eaters. In fact, kestrels actually get the nickname sparrowhawk because they like to go after small sparrow-sized birds. But a peregrine, they like to go after pigeons and even ducks. Can you imagine hitting a pigeon at 200 miles an hour with really skinny toes? You could break your toes, right? So what they'll do is they'll actually ball their feet and they'll punch their prey right out of the sky. It's called a falcon punch, and it stuns their prey so that way they can safely come back and then grab it with those feet. Now he likes to go after birds, especially in the wintertime, but in the summer, there's something else that flies around that he likes to go after. What do you think? Yeah. Bugs, yeah, about 90% of their diet in the summertime oftentimes is bugs. In fact, we call Cyrus little dragon slayer because he loves to chase dragonflies in our backyard. In fact, the kestrels that do migrate in the fall, they'll actually follow the green dragonfly on migration. When the green dragonflies start migrating, they follow them and they'll eat them as they migrate. It's kind of their version of fast food. Now, because they eat so many insects in the summertime, their numbers have been declining since the 70s. And there's most logical reason they think as to why those numbers are declining is the use of pesticides. So it is something to keep an eye on with these guys and keep an eye on their population. And one of the things we'll come back to at the end on how we can help kestrels and other insect eaters. So, before I put him away, you can see he's kind of bobbing his tail. That's a kestrel trait. He always does that when he's really happy. And these guys can actually hover. Just like hummingbirds, they hover when they're flying at a flower. Not a lot of birds hover because it takes a lot of energy. But raptors have something called gaze stabilization. So when he's focused, his head will stay completely still while I move his body around. And that is so that those eyes, if they're focused on something and they're watching something, their head can stay still while their body still moves around. Quite a few other birds are able to do this. You guys have chickens at home. Their chickens will actually do it as well, which is pretty fun. But I can only do it when he's really focused, which he's watching something over there that he likes. All right, we're going to get Cyrus put away because we've got one more bird for you guys. Ready? Now, unfortunately, I don't have an eagle with us. So we've got one last bird to take a look at, which is what kind? An owl. What do owls like to hunt? At night, what do we call them? We call that nocturnal. Yeah. So I've got a few bio facts to show you some of the cool adaptations owls have for hunting at night. So the first one's actually in their skull. This is my owl skull. This is my hawk skull. You guys notice the eye sockets on that owl skull? Do you remember how big I said an owl's eyes are? As big as what? Their brains. Owl's eyes are actually bigger than their brains. If we were to have the same size eyes in comparison to our body as an owl, our eyes would be the size of our fist. Could you imagine that? Put your fist up. That's how big your eyes would be. Now I want to do said. So we have muscles behind our eyes that allow our eyes to move. Raptors' eyes, they're so big, they don't have room left for those muscles. So those eyes are actually fixed inside their head, which is why they have necks that are much more flexible than ours. If you turn your head all the way to the side, front to shoulder is 90 degrees. Hawks, eagles, and falcons can look behind their backs at 180. And owls can go a little further. They can go over their shoulder, behind their backs, and all the way over their other shoulder. 270. Not quite all the way around, but getting pretty close. All right, this is my hawk foot. It's the red-tailed hawk. And I've got a snowy owl foot. What do you guys notice on the snowy owl foot? Yeah. It's more hairy, that's right. But we know owls don't have hair, right? What do owls have? Feathers, yeah. So owl feet have feathers that go all the way to their toes. Why do you think owls have feathers on their feet? Yeah. It helps them stay warm, that's right. It's kind of like wearing socks. I like to use the snowy owl as an example too because they live up in the Arctic, right? So they have so many feathers, it actually acts like snowshoes. It allows them to be able to walk on the snow. Now, you guys heard that owls have silent flight? Some of you, yeah. So it has to do with the way their feathers are designed. So my hawk feather here, if we look at the feather here, it's sort of smooth on top and on bottom. The feather's kind of stiff. And if we listen, see if we can hear this one. Don't worry for you guys in the back, I can show you something a little different. Now my owl wing here is sort of fringed on the leading feather. The bottom of every one of those flight feathers has that slight fringing to it, and the feathers are very soft. See if you guys can hear this one. You can't quite hear that one, can you? Alright, so this is just like my feathers. This is like my hawk feather. It's sort of smooth on both sides and kind of stiff. Let's get it spinning here. Maybe. Here, try this way. You guys can hear that in the back, right? Yeah, so if you look at the stick is vibrating. All we have to do is put some burlap on it to give it that sort of soft and fringed edge. And I can't get that one to make that same vibrating noise. So because they're so soft, they don't vibrate like other birds' feathers. Now, at the end of the program, you guys are welcome to come on up here. I do have a couple of other artifacts for you guys to see. We've got a barred owl wing and a snowy owl wing. I recommend you guys all come up and touch the difference between owl feathers and hawk feathers because you'll notice that the owl feathers are much, much softer. And this one is from a broadwing hawk. And then we have a couple other feet you guys are allowed to come up and touch. It's got a barred owl. And then this is actually from an osprey. Do you guys remember when we said osprey eat? What do they eat? Yeah, fish. Yeah, about 95% of their diet is fish. So if you touch the bottom of their feet, they're very rough because fish are really slippery. So that's kind of a neat thing to come take a look at as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get out my owl.
Oh, the owl's coming out. You might want to say.
We have 11 different types of owls in Wisconsin. But this one is a pretty special owl because at one time they were considered extirpated from the state of Wisconsin. You guys know what kind she is? Yeah. A barn owl. Yeah. So this is Sophie. Now as you guys take a look at her, you can see she's got those big eyes and that curved beak. She does have feathers on her toes. They're not quite as thick as the snowy owls, but they are all the way down there. What else do you guys notice about her that might be different than our first two birds? Yeah. Yeah, actually it's kind of like a heart shape, right? Yeah, look at her face. It's sort of round, kind of flat, almost like she was hit with a frying pan. Actually, I have a friend with a barn owl named Frying Pan. But that's actually her facialness. So if spatial this does. It's like a giant satellite dish collecting sound and sending it to those ears. Now we can't see her ears because they're just little holes covered by her feathers, but I do need a volunteer if they can come up and help me. Yeah, why don't you come up here? What's your name? Delaney. All right, Delaney, can you do me a favor and point to your ears for me? All right, so humans have symmetrical hearing, one ear right across from the other. Now take a look at Sophie, and then point on your head where you think her ears might be. You think they may be in the same spot, higher, lower? Okay, take one finger and put it up this, but I'm going to keep this one down here. All right, turn and look everybody. Owls have asymmetrical hearing. They have an ear up high facing forward and an ear down low facing backwards. Thank you, Delaney. You've never seen it. Now, by having this misplaced ears, it allows owls to do something called triangulation. So what they'll do is they'll kind of bob their heads, they'll kind of collect all these different points of sound, and then they can find their prey without ever having to see it, just by hearing it. In fact, barn owls have the best hearing out of any animal they've ever been able to test. That hearing is so good, they could hear a mouse under 3 feet of snow. Her hearing is so good, she can hear your hearts beating right now. That's how good it is. So it makes these guys excellent hunters. In fact, they are so good at hunting that a family of barn owls can eat more mice in a night than 10 barn cats combined. That's close to 10,000 mice every single year. So these guys are so much better to have, especially if you live out on a farm, to attract those barn owls to your barn instead of those barn cats, because they're going to be much better predators at getting rid of those mice. It's also a good reason to not use mouse poison or rat poison, because when you use poison, those mice don't die right away. They actually kind of wander off. And if a barn owl eats a poisoned mouse, they actually get poisoned as well. So sticking to mouse traps to get rid of mice if we have a problem is much better than using poison. Now, one of the coolest things I think about barn owls, though, is these guys are actually responsible for some ghost stories. And I'll tell you why in a second. What do owls like to say? What does an owl say? Yeah, so now all owls, though, they all say hi in a different way. Do you guys know what a great horned owl says? They go, you guys try that one? Do you guys know what the barred owl says? They do the who cooks for you, yeah. What about the solid owl? That was a little harder. They sound like a truck backing up. They go. But my favorite is probably the screech owl. They go. A little harder to do. You guys know what the barn owl says? Ah! In fact, people say it sounds like a woman screaming. Now imagine a couple hundred years ago, you're a farmer, and all you hear is screaming coming from your barn. You're like, oh my God, what's going on? You go out there, and you walk into your barn, and something white floats silently over your head. What would you think it was? They thought it was ghosts in their barn, and so they thought their barns were haunted. So that's why I like to say these guys caused a lot of ghost stories, because they didn't realize that the barn owls were living in their barns. But barn owls are cavity nesters. That's why they like to go in barns. But they will also use dead hollow trees, or better yet, if you guys don't have a lot of dead trees on your property, and you want to encourage owls and other animals to come, you can put up nest boxes. Barn owls, kestrels, screech owls, all of those different types of birds will actually use nest boxes to nest in. So if you live out in the country, go ahead and put some of those up in your woods, and hopefully you'll be able to attract some owls and other animals. And if you hear screaming going out in your woods, don't be too alarmed. Hopefully it's just a barn owl that decided to come. But that brings us to the most important part of our program. We've talked about a couple things you guys can do, such as not using poison, putting up nest boxes is a great idea. For those of you who like to fish and like to hunt, switching to non-lead is really great, especially for fishermen if you use sinkers. Swans and loons, they like to eat little rocks to help them digest. And the size of a sinker is similar to the rocks that they eat. So that's how they end up getting lead poisoning from those sinkers. But by switching, we can help all those. But the best thing we can do is to not just focus on owls and raptors, is to think about the whole food chain. And so if we go to the very start of the food chain, what's at the bottom of the food chain? Yeah. Insects, yeah. And even farther down are plants. And so if you guys, whether you have a giant yard or a tiny little yard, just by putting in, Sophie, just by planting a couple of native flowers and native grasses, we're providing food for native bugs. Then those native bugs feed native birds and native rodents. Those small birds and rodents feed bigger birds and bigger animals. So just by having native flowers in our yard, we can feed all the animals in our neighborhood. By not using pesticides, we allow those bugs to be around, just like we said for the kestrel. He needs those bugs. And sometimes it might even be that monarch butterfly is just migrating through and stops in your backyard just for a quick thing to eat before heading back down. So native is most important because that's what feeds our native bugs. And even if you don't have enough ground to plant into the ground, even a couple potted flowers is enough to provide foods for some of those animals. So how many of you guys think you can do that this summer? And for sure next year? Awesome! Yeah, just doing that is going to help a bunch of the birds. So that's all I have for you guys today. If you guys want some more ideas, I can give you some of those as well. But what I'm going to do is for those of you who want to get going because maybe you don't want to sit any longer, you're welcome to go. Otherwise, I will take the kestrel back out so you guys can get a closer look at those nostrils.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll bring you something again real soon.